Hi, my friend, Caleb Johnson here, and I have a huge question to ask you, real estate investors. How would you rate your level of personal discipline on a scale of 1 to 10? If your answer is anything less than a 10, I've got something neat for you. And let me tell you, discipline means pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and doing things that are difficult and sometimes boring. Achieving massive success requires you to do those difficult things. Building your levels of personal discipline is not easy, but it does pay off. In fact, you can't achieve anything significant without discipline. Now, I just released a program for investors where I walk with you as an accountability coach to aid you stay on track so you can push yourself to do the hard things that greatness is going to require of you. Starting is easy. Go to redseacapitalgroup.com and click accountability coaching at the top right of the screen. So let's get to work, and now to the interview. How's it going, everyone? My name is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph. This is the show where I interview guests who have gone through tremendous trials and have come out triumphant. I'm really excited to jump in today, and we'll just get right to it. Today we have Amy Cooper, and I've known Amy for a couple years now, and it's just been a pleasure to really see her grow and investing and just as a mother and a wife, and so I'm super excited about today. So Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so great to have you. Amy, can you give our listeners a quick background story just about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of make light of it, but I always say I was my father's son. My mom and dad got married and had me. My sister was 5 years older, and my mom's first husband had actually died in the Vietnam War when she was a baby. So my dad married my mom, adopted her, and then they had me. Because I was my father's son, we watched football together and we did all those things. And I learned business from him. I had a pretty amazing childhood. My mom stayed home for most of my childhood, and then went to work when I was a little bit older. My dad was in the oil business. We moved around quite a bit, so I got a lot of exposure to. We were in Texas quite a bit, Houston and Dallas, and then in Atlanta and Pensacola, Florida. So moved around quite a bit as a kid. Most of my life I was in Texas. And found out as I started working, got my degree in fashion merchandising with a minor in business, and found out pretty quickly that sales was a really good fit for me, and also that I had an entrepreneurial spirit. So I worked in the paint business for quite a while. I worked for Glidden Paint. I worked for Frazee Paint and PPG Paint through the course of my career. So a lot of paint industry, but also started a business with my first husband. We started a helium and balloon business and was really excited about doing that. Moved to Arizona to do that. And unfortunately, business went really well, but our marriage did not go so well. We had a little girl, my daughter Samantha, who is now 24. And I made the decision to, instead of doing the entrepreneurial thing, I let him have the business, and I decided I would get back into corporate. So that's kind of where my trials really began, honestly. I had this really good foundation, and my parents said, sure, you can do anything you set your mind to. And I had gotten my degree, and I had my career path. I was going to be in sales. And I started in that workforce and quickly realized that although I was performing very well and leading my department in sales, that sometimes that didn't matter. That unfortunately, whoever's above you, if they have some power, they can make some things happen. So there was a gentleman who would hang out with a boss and go, party with a boss. And I got removed from my position so that this gentleman could then come in and have my position. So Really tough as a single mom at that point to deal with that. And probably a place that there could have been a lawsuit. But for me, I needed to be positive and focused for my daughter. And I didn't want to go down an emotional roller coaster of trying to recapture some kind of money for wrongdoing. And I let my faith in that all things would work out, take precedence, and, just grinded through that situation. So, unfortunately, that wasn't the only time that happened. It happened a couple more times, not that specific situation, but something very similar. My numbers, strong, sales, I just really thrive as a salesperson because I love personal relationships. And I really like to grow relationships with people and understand what that client needs. So loved the sales piece and component, but there was always, it seemed, in several situations, somebody that was intimidated by my success or my strength. And instead of capitalizing on that, they tried to minimize or put me in a situation that I wasn't able to thrive. So challenging to say the least. I kept my entrepreneurial spirit and in the last 5 years have been able to take that entrepreneurial spirit, all of the lessons I've learned from all these places, because I was in the paint industry for quite a while and then went into a sales role, VP of sales for a construction firm. And as I was doing that, really learned the industry of single family rental, the single family rental space. I also started working with my daughter on a personal real estate investment function. And ironically, as I had gone through the series of corporate America and the squeezing out of positions, I continually knew that I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to run the show because I wanted to be fair to people. I wanted to thrive. I wanted to do all that. And as I started to learn more and more about real estate, using other people's money, that type of thing, I had heard about those things. But my daughter was in college, and I asked her what she thought she really wanted to do. She was getting a business degree. And she said, I'm not sure. She also had an entrepreneurial spirit. And I said to her when she was in between her freshman and sophomore year, I told her if she could figure out what she wanted to do, I wanted to help support her in building a business while I had my W-2, help her build something so that she didn't end up like I did under somebody's thumb. She could thrive. She could use her God-given abilities to do something that fulfilled her as well as God's will. And she said, I think it's real estate, but I don't know what that looks like. So she was 19 years old, and we started a journey together of let's figure out what that looks like. And the first year of that journey, it hit me. I was beating myself up, and I was thinking to myself, why didn't I do this before? Why have I not gone down this road myself before? And I realized that I got an answer. I got this just not an audible voice, but just this saying, it wasn't supposed to be for your daughter. It was supposed to be with your daughter. And yeah, I go back a bit. When I was with the paint business, I had met Ken McElroy, who a lot of people know in this business. He was at MC Companies, and I was selling paint to their group for multifamily paint. And he had invited me to an event at the Phoenix Open, and I sat at a table with Robert Kiyosaki on my right and Doug Ducey on my left. And Doug Ducey was talking to me about a Cold Stone Creamery that was going to be for sale. And Robert Kiyosaki was talking to me about his book and everything. And I was a single mom, and I had just gotten a very small buyout from my ex-husband for our business. And they both had all these ideas. And I sat there saying, oh, well, I can't do that. I can't do a retail ice cream store. I'm a single mom, and I can't take a chance and do this real estate thing because I had grown up with a family that had the pension and had all the, 10% to God and 10% in savings, and then let the stock market roll for you, right? And so I sat then, this many years later with my daughter thinking, why didn't I listen? Why didn't I buy the Cold Stone Creamery? Why didn't I listen to Robert Kiyosaki of all people? And that message came to me. It wasn't for her, it's with her. And it's been a really, really great adventure. We're both learning, and we've done single family flips. We have done short-term rental, several of those. And in fact, that's what she's doing now is she manages several short-term rentals. So I finally figured it out and I've finally taken those big strides to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And, it's been really exciting, scary at times, but honestly, I feel like I finally got in the right headspace and got aligned with God and His will for me. And all of the things that I've learned through my career and through all of that have really helped me get to this point. So I just closed in February of this year on a RV park in Texas.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been fun. It's been eventful. It's been eye-opening. But I feel like my skill set is here, and I am able to take all the components of this property. It's 77 acres. It's got 38 spots, but about 20 of those are full-timers, which is great. We also have a lot of in-and-out RV places. And then I've taken 2 of the cabins that were on site that were being used as storage and an office, and I've moved those into a short-term rental component. Also going to have some storage on the property as well. So we'll have 4 different flows of cash flow, 4 different ways that we're getting full-time RV rental, in and outs, Airbnb component, and the storage component. So it's been very exciting. And we also have a 9-acre lake on the property, as well as a safari park. We've got safari animals here. So it's really a place that our full-time residents love because it's quiet, it's serene. On the weekends, they can get out. You see animals every day. We have a resident donkey named George, and our new addition is his wife, Joy.
That's great.
So anyway, it's been interesting to see all the things I've learned through my careers have come to fruition with running this property. So,
a side note, I used to want to be a zookeeper, so that really resonated with me. And I didn't know that your lake was that large.
Yeah.
I want to go fishing now, but we're not here to talk about that. So working, I love that you felt that whenever, the reason that you didn't first start pursuing all these entrepreneurial adventures or excursions was because you felt ultimately it was, you're supposed to do this with your daughter. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about people that go into business with family, or maybe they borrow money from family. But it sounds like you've had a really great experience, and this is actually really the driving force behind your business and what motivates you. So can you talk about the dynamic between you and your daughter, Samantha, and some of the trials that you guys have gone through with working together as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny. I turned down all those other situations because I needed to be a focused mom. And then when it was time for us to start when we started talking about working together, it was really exciting to see her learn, and she loves learning. And so doing flips, our favorite part was demolition, right? Demolition and design, right? You go in and you take, you demolish everything, and then you get to design what it is that you see. So it was a really a solid place, and we thrived in that space where we would demolish and design. And then also with the communication of staying on top of general contractors and all the trades for what needed to happen, right? We worked really well together in that space. She even decided to take a gap year because she was in Seattle in school, and then decided to take a gap year to stay in Arizona during a summer and then an entire year just to kind of help get through a couple of flips we'd done and some family stuff. So that was a really good space because she was able to take on some things. I would say challenges have been since we stopped doing the flips, and one of the reasons we stopped was we were using hard money. And until we got to a place that we could facilitate the financing, the hard money was just a little expensive for us, and getting and buying the property got to be a little bit more expensive as well, just with Phoenix being so saturated. So as we kind of shifted and she needed to finish school, she decided to finish at ASU, we started doing short-term rental management. Again, design for that was great. The cash flow, really good. And, I think right now she's managing at the park, at the RV park. She manages the cabins, the short-term cabins there, as well as we're going to be having some, we're adding some space where we have RVs that are actually for rent, because there's a lot of people that don't own one, but they want to come out and have that experience. So as we have both adjusted as we've moved from flips to different roles, I think there has been a challenge in saying, okay, what's your role? What's my role? And then you always have, and I think this happens, I know this happens in a marriage with a spouse, husband, wife that run a business together. It's not allowing work to take over that relationship. So one of the things that I saw happening was we were getting frustrated with just, that's all we did. We would just talk about work, or it would just be communicating back and forth because of, an issue that was coming up. And so there was a lot more tense times in it. Well, I've prided myself on really trying to spend quality time with each of my kids, because I have her, but then when I got remarried in 2010, I took on 5 new children. So I have 5 stepchildren and her. And I really try to spend one-on-one time with all of them, and especially with my daughter who took on all these new siblings. It was important that she and I had that time, that quality one-on-one time. So I saw that fade rather quickly when we were working together, because we spent so much time together that it was kind of like, oh, do we really want to, So I had to take a step back and go, okay, hold on a second. I don't like this dynamic. And she didn't like it either. And we really just had to talk through it and say, hold on, what are we doing here? So we started making a commitment. We always had date night. Back when she was little, we would go to the tortilla factory in Old Town, Scottsdale, and then we'd walk down the street to the Sugar Bowl and have dessert. That was our date night. And then it changed to Chipotle, and, I think it was Cold Stone Creamery was our, so wherever we moved or lived, we always had that. So we started that. And now that she was an adult, we would be, let's go have sushi and a glass of wine. But making that committed effort to stop and say, this isn't about work. And I try to do that fairly often, where I'll just call and say, hey, how are you? What's going on, right? How's life, right? And it's something that you have to be conscious of, you have to be intentional about. And you also, as a mom, and as she used to call me her momager, whenever she was in college and trying to get things done as a momager, I had to step away from that role and allow her to figure out what her role was, right? And I think as a parent, when you are so used to parenting and now you have an adult child, you have to stop and step back. We had found a friendship when it was age appropriate. I don't believe that you're supposed to be best friends with your 5-year-old or your 10-year-old or even your 13-year-old. I believe that you get to be friends when they are responsible for their actions and they don't need as much parenting as possible. But we had a really good friendship when it was appropriate, and we needed to continue that. And I needed to allow her to make mistakes and figure some things out for herself as an adult in the workforce, right? I'm very proud of her for not going, for standing her ground and saying, okay, I'm not going to go into corporate America, but she also doesn't know the difference at some point. She did have a stint in corporate where she worked for a commercial multifamily broker, so she understands that world, but it's a little different when you are forging your own thing at such a young age, as I'm sure
Right.
you know, right?
Right. And you said a couple of really great points. And the one that I want to touch on a bit was how important it is, not even if you're working with your family or working with your friends or whatever that looks like for you or who's ever listening to this, but it's so important for just to take a pause from the daily mundane and spend some quality time with your loved ones, whatever
Yes.
that is, or even quality time with yourself if that's what you need. And
Yes.
it's so important because, like you said, you can only talk about work. And I hear a lot of people that are married, sometimes that's how it is. And you come home and you talk about work and you guys just do your own routine.
Yep.
And it's almost like you can be a roommate. I've heard that.
Absolutely.
And I think you just hit that right on the head. That really impacted me.
Yep.
And I know you also have an interesting journey on your second marriage, and that kind of leads us down that path. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got remarried. I was single for 8 years, got remarried in 2010. And as I mentioned earlier, my current husband has 5 children. And I always say, not only does he have 5 children, but he has 2 ex-wives. So bringing on the kids, the other portion was really the hardest part, obviously. Actually, naively, I walked into that situation because I love children, because I loved him, and I really had no concept of what I was getting into, because I thought, I'm going to love these kids as if they were my own. I'm going to help raise them, because he was a full-time, like half-time father. He wasn't in every other weekend. We had kids half the time. And I knew what that looked like. Our first year of marriage was 6 kids in 5 different schools.
Wow.
And anybody who's had kids in school know that, like, it was insane. And so I took that to heart. And I tell you, I was co-parenting with 3 other people, because I've got my ex-husband and I have 2 other. And I really expected there to be a lot of just communication and respect, because it should be about the children and their best interest. And unfortunately, that didn't really play out like I expected it to. Again, I was very naive. There was a lot of games that were being played. There was a lot of things that were, unfortunately, the kids were this pawn in this game, and that just went against everything I knew to be right. And so there was a lot of struggle there. My husband, unfortunately, did not have a background that I did. He had a mom that was married 14 times.
Wow.
to 11 different men. And so he did not. Yeah. So she remarried the same. I see your head. You're like,
Yeah,
what does that
you
mean
saw me thinking
exactly?
like,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
that's not, that doesn't add up. Okay,
14
go ahead.
times to 11 different men. And so, unfortunately, he didn't really know how to set boundaries. He got caught up in some of the drama, and it took a toll on our marriage. So much so that after 7 years of marriage, we separated, and and that was my doing. I kind of threw in the towel. I said, okay, I can't do this. This is too much. And I don't believe in divorce. Been divorced once, did not want to be divorced a second time, but it was at a place we had gone to counseling. We had tried just about everything there was to try, and I just had to say, hold on. And it was my health. It was, a lot of things that I needed to stop while it was where it was. So, fortunately for me, I was right in the heat of my flips. So demolishing things and doing demo was a really good place for me to go and get my, energy, put my negative energy out on. And I just did a lot of letting go of my expectations, letting go of just my ideas of what things should look like, and really leaning on my faith. And in that time frame, got closer than I ever had to Christ and my relationship there. I joined a couple of Bible studies that I just got into the Word. And while I had always grown up a Christian, I believe I became, instead of a lowercase C Christian, uppercase C Christian, and I allowed the Holy Spirit to lead me, not my own wants and thoughts. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people say, I just want you to be happy, or I just want my kids to be happy. We learn so much in the hard things, and there is so much to learn during that time, and we're being refined during that time. And I allowed him to work through things with me. And both my husband and I, we had times where we didn't talk very often, but to his credit, he did pursue me during that time, even though I made it really difficult. He pursued me. He did his own reading of the Word, and he is definitely a student of, really wanting to know what God has in his life for him. And so we did that very separately. And last October of 2021, came back together, and again, long story there, but needless to say, neither one of us went out looking for a bigger, better deal. And believe me, I don't know how many people I shouldn't say in my close circle, my close circle didn't, but a lot of people will tell you, oh, you should try this, or you should go out with this person, or, oh, you're so young, there's so much opportunity. And there's all these things that come at you. Even ironically, Facebook would all of a sudden throw these, oh, you should connect with this single guy. Even though I had not even, it was amazing. It was amazing the things that came my way that it was very easy to see it was the devil at play. And I wasn't going to bite on that. I needed to work on myself. I needed to, and not even work on myself, I just needed to go to him for more support and just surrender to what he had for my life. So it's been a journey. It's been interesting. And I would definitely say a trial. The biggest trial was taking on all of these babies and these other two human beings, adult women, who just made it really hard. I'm proud to say I held my tongue on every occasion, and I don't have any regrets that I emotionally I did to my husband, but not to them, which I had to ask for lots of forgiveness for that. But needless to say, those trials have refined both my husband and I, refined our relationship with our children because they learned through it all and they have seen that you can work through things. And hopefully we'll take caution as they choose their spouse, as they choose what they would like to, have their life look like. One of the things I've always told my children is they have two examples. They have the example that I have set for them. They have the example that the other household has set for them. So our household versus the other household. No one's perfect. They should take the good from both, see the bad in both, and recognize I don't want to make those same mistakes. And if all of my kids can take that, then they will be so much further along than I am, and that's what I wish for all my kids. I want them to be on my shoulders, right? But I always use this analogy. I don't even want them here. I want to push them up higher. I want them to be heads and tails above where I have made it, right? And helping the generation get stronger rather than weaker. Because I look today at our society and I feel like the generations just keep getting weaker and weaker. And I believe that we need to strengthen and grow from what our parents found as mistakes,
I definitely agree with that. And one thing that you said just now that really stood out to me was that it's so unfortunate that there's so many broken families in America today. I think the divorce rate is over 50%.
Yep.
And so there's so many kids, and like you said, it's so unfortunate that they become pawns. And but what you said was you share with your kids, okay, no one's perfect. I'm not perfect, right? And you take the good from both sides of the family and you can compare and really choose who you want to be. And, you're telling your stepkids that you get to choose how you want your marriage to be like, what you want to look for in a spouse. And I think I love your story too. Just, I'm in a men's group where it's so sad. It's like men just come in and they're going through divorce, and it's so rampant in America today. But kind of taking a step back from that, you mentioned something earlier, just talking about your background and sales and corporate America. What some of those challenges that you had with being kind of pushed out of your job where you had every right to be, how did that affect you? I think being as a woman in corporate America, like what was your mentality going into that?
Well, again, much like my second marriage, I think I was pretty naive. And my first few years in sales, I was in a really good environment. I was appreciated. I learned a lot. It was a really good space for me to grow in. But then as I got a little bit older and, was in Phoenix and working, in these spaces, I realized, well, I didn't realize at the time, actually, I was still a little naive. I think that on a personal side of things, as a woman, we are typically, we're nurturing and maternal, and we take care of things. And while I was really good at sales, I was always doing that too. I was making sure that, the people around me were thriving or helping as I could. I would always go above and beyond, right? And while in the safety of your own family, that's typically a safe space, hopefully, in corporate world and in a male-dominated space, I found that I was taken advantage of in that way. And there was expectations and or things that happened and I was not made aware of situations, or I was pushed out of a situation because I was a woman. And again, being naive, I didn't really understand it. I had a great relationship with my dad. I had a lot of guy friends because I like football and because I was pretty athletic. And I love the camaraderie of, sometimes women get caught up in certain conversations and men just didn't do that. I just didn't, so I think what happened for me is I had this way it was on a personal level, and it was that same way at work. And I didn't see that, hold on, there's a place that you got to stand your ground, and you have to let people know this is kind of who I am. This is what my value is. And I've found, as I've looked back, I don't know, there's some men a couple of people that were pretty blatant about what they did and how they pushed me out of situations. And I'm not talking about them per se, but I think that there is it's just the dynamic between men and women, right? And if a woman doesn't come in and say, okay, this is where I am, or if a woman isn't in a higher position for it to be stated, then I think there can just be some kind of gray area. And so I found, as I progressed in my career, I needed to make that gray area more clear. I needed to be more black and white with things. And I needed to present and show up as this. And I could still have these things that were maternal and female, but I still needed to present a certain way. And it's not that I necessarily want it. It's one of the reasons I'm so happy that I am now a business owner and I can do as I need to. But I just think, as much as we've evolved, because I will say we have evolved, I don't believe, I think that there is a place for both men and women in the workforce. I also really strongly believe that there should be a parent at home. And I'm not saying it has to be female or male, but I think kids need a parent at home. Lots of discussion there, I'm sure. There's probably, there's tons of people that don't necessarily agree, but I feel like part of our problem right now is there's two working people, and it's because people want more things, right? So we've got to both work, and I just, but not to get off on a tangent, but literally what I believe happened with me was I had to kind of mature in this space that, okay, this isn't the same as me being maternal or me taking care. This is my job. This is how I need to present myself. This is where I need to say, this is, just there needed to be a line in the sand on certain things. And also, those people that are salespeople can appreciate this. You sell, and a lot of times you're selling for a quota or you get a commission. So that's your reward. What I realized pretty early on is there's an internal sales component for any sales team. Sales and operations are always kind of battling with each other for some reason. But as a salesperson, you have to go back to your team, back to your environment, back to the organization, and communicate clearly what you're doing, because everyone needs to know. And I think most salespeople are a bit ADD, right? We're like, ding, 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 ding. There's so much going on. Not great at reporting necessarily. They're on to the next sale. And what I've found is I had to rein myself in, and because I don't like to tout, I don't like to, oh, look at what I did. I just want to do what I do and I shouldn't have to tell everybody what I did. They should see, but a lot of people don't see. And I think it's important to, if you are in a role where you're in sales and you've got an operational side, you've got to let them know, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm doing it. And they need to see that so they understand, like, this is what that person's doing. You also have to be very respectful to what operations can and cannot do. In my latest sales role, VP of business development for CalCap Properties, you have a whole operational team that's managing multifamily communities, and it's important to be sure what their capacity is, what they can do, what they can't do, so that you can share that with a prospect or a client and make sure, that all things work well, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I really appreciate you going into that. Just so I think so many people don't understand that there needs to be that relationship between operations and the sales team.
Yep.
That's huge. And I think we are unfortunately running out of time. So I'll go ahead and ask you 3 questions. And that first being, if you could recommend a book to our listeners, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to go off for 1 second. I would say number 1, if you can just put a little bit of time into reading the Bible, it's really cool stuff. Like, even if you're not a believer, it's an amazing story, because that's where I always go to, try to daily. But as far as career and actually life, one of my favorites is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It is so related. It's such a relatable book to anything in life, whether it's parenting, whether it's health, even a spiritual or your career. And I know for a lot of people that have just gotten into real estate, they feel like, oh, I've missed out. There's a lot of people that don't feel like, I know I felt that way 5 years ago. Oh, I'm not there. But the Compound Effect will give you a really good guideline of what to do, and it's just day by day and consistency. So that's one of my favorites.
That's such a great book. I'm so glad you said that, because like you said, yeah, it has a huge impact, and I think it's one of the top 5 or even top 10 books that people should read. And so, Amy, the second question that I am going to ask you is, if people want to learn more about you or potentially invest with you, what is the best place for them to do that at?
So it would be, my email is Amy, AMY, at fortressfinders.com. And then my phone number, best way to get me is always to text or call 480-292-4043.
That was great. I appreciate you giving that, because a lot of people aren't okay just giving out their phone number. So
I'm good with that.
And the last question would be, if you can share with our listeners one takeaway from today's show, what would that be?
I would say that we all go through seasons of life, and I've learned in my 53 years that, I had this pretty amazing childhood, and then I look at my husband, and he had a pretty crappy childhood, and then as his adult life, he's had some really good success, and during my adult life, I've had some really tough seasons. So I think we all have different times that we go through trials, and it's refining, and we can take those trials and not be victims. We can take those trials and learn from them. We can take those trials, be better for them, and hopefully share those experiences with people in our lives, because I believe that's what we're all here for, to go through life, and the hard stuff that we go through, we can actually help others as they're going through that. So people who are having struggle with marriage, moms going through trying to figure out a career and motherhood, people trying to get into real estate. Like, I want to touch anybody that I can that needs help in those areas that I've been refined, because I believe that God gave me those challenges and those trials so that I can go forward and help others as they're going through their trials.
And I think everyone that's listening to this should rewind that a minute, because that is such a great point, that if, for example, you see someone that's going through a divorce and you've been there, maybe coming alongside them and telling them, hey, I'm here for you, and I understand even just what you're going through.
Right.
You know, sometimes it feels like life is so lonely.
Yep.
And if someone can come alongside you, that is such an uplifting moment. So, Amy, that was beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it was such a great opportunity to hear a little bit more about your story and just what you have going on. And I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I look forward to watching your podcast, and I'm excited that you're doing this. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's such a privilege. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you at the next time.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.